The glass switched hands without a sound. Adrian Cross noticed it instantly, not because he was paranoid, but because he had survived 3 near deaths in the last 8 months, and survival had trained his eyes to catch what others missed. Across the candle-lit table, his girlfriend's fingers trembled as crystal touched crystal. A soft clink, barely audible, a mistake most people would never register. But Adrian did. He didn't react. He didn't speak. He didn't stop her. He simply watched. And in that moment, the last doubt inside him died. 8 months earlier, Adrian Cross would have laughed at the idea of enemies hiding in plain sight. Billionaires attracted rivals, sure, but not assassins, not people willing to make it look like accidents. The first incident had been brushed off as mechanical failure. His car's brakes failed while descending a private mountain road. The second, an elevator that dropped 3 floors before emergency locks kicked in. The third nearly killed him, a sudden allergic reaction to a meal he'd eaten 100 times before. Doctors said coincidence. Security said bad luck. Adrian said nothing. Instead, he began to watch. He reduced meetings, fired no one, changed nothing. He let everyone believe he was shaken, distracted, vulnerable. The quieter he became, the louder people revealed themselves. Silence had become his shield. And tonight, silence had just exposed something far worse than an enemy. The private dining room overlooked the city like a throne above ants. 20 floors up, no windows opened, no staff lingered longer than necessary, just old money, new power, and polite smiles sharpened into weapons. His girlfriend, Lena, sat beside him. She was the only one allowed this close. Lena had been his constant during the months of recovery. She'd stayed when the nightmares came, when his hands shook holding a glass, when the press speculated he was losing control of his empire. She had cried with him. That was the part that hurt the most. "Are you all right?" she whispered now, eyes soft, voice perfectly pitched. Adrian nodded. "Just tired." It wasn't a lie. The drink sat in front of him, amber liquid catching candlelight, the one she'd just switched. Around the table, conversation resumed, deals masked as jokes, compliments that carried threats beneath them. Adrian didn't join in, he observed, who leaned forward, who avoided eye contact, who checked their phone too quickly. And Lena. Lena kept her hands folded tightly in her lap, too tightly. Minutes passed. Adrian didn't drink. Instead, he stood. "Excuse me," he said calmly. "I'm not feeling well." The room paused, just for half a second. Long enough. One man frowned, another stiffened, and Lena's breath caught. "I'll come with you," she said quickly, already rising. "No," Adrian replied gently. "Stay." The word wasn't sharp, it wasn't loud, but it landed like a command. She froze. That told him everything. In the private bathroom, Adrian locked the door and leaned against the marble sink. His reflection stared back, older, sharper, more tired than the man he'd been a year ago. He pulled a small testing strip from his jacket pocket, dipped it into the untouched glass he'd brought with him. The strip changed color almost instantly. Adrian exhaled slowly. Not lethal, not tonight. A warning dose. Whoever orchestrated this wanted him scared, or wanted to test how far they could go. His phone vibrated. Security feed. Live. He watched Lena on the screen. She sat perfectly still for 10 seconds after he left. Then she reached for her phone with shaking fingers and typed a single message. "It's done." Adrian closed his eyes. He returned to the table, pale, hand pressed to his side, playing the part flawlessly. "I think I need to leave," he said. "I'm dizzy." Concern rippled outward, but not evenly. One man leaned back, relieved too quickly. Another watched Adrian like a chessboard losing a king. And Lena. Lena stood again, panic breaking through her composure. "Adrian, please, let me help you." He met her eyes. For just a second. In that look, she saw something change. Not anger, not accusation, finality. "I'll be fine," he said softly. That lie tasted worse than the poison. The car ride home was silent. Lena stared out the window, nails digging into her palm. Adrian watched her reflection in the glass, memorizing every fracture in her mask. Halfway home, she spoke. "I was scared tonight." "Of what?" Adrian asked evenly. She hesitated. "Losing you." Another half-truth. Adrian said nothing. Silence again. If you're still watching right now, this is where things begin to unravel. So make sure you're subscribed. Stories like this don't slow down. They only get darker from here. That night, Adrian didn't sleep. Instead, he reviewed footage, financial logs, access records, patterns only someone close could create. Lena's accounts showed small transfers. Not luxury spending, emergency money, fear money. Her phone records showed encrypted calls, short, irregular, always followed by visible distress. This wasn't ambition. This was coercion. At dawn, Adrian made a decision. He wouldn't confront her yet, not until he knew who held the leash. 3 days later, Adrian staged a collapse. Ambulance, hospital, controlled leaks to the media, doctors whispering words like complications and uncertain. The city buzzed, and the trap snapped shut. Within hours, a familiar name surfaced, one that had been quietly gaining power each time Adrian nearly died. Marcus Hale, board member, old ally, the man who'd stepped in helpfully after every accident. Adrian smiled for the first time in weeks. That evening, Lena visited the hospital. She stood by his bed, eyes red, voice breaking. "I thought you were going to die." Adrian turned his head slowly. "Why?" he asked. The word shattered her. Her knees buckled as she sank into the chair, hands covering her face. When she spoke, her voice was raw, stripped of lies. "They have my brother," she whispered. "He said if I didn't do it, they'd kill him." Adrian closed his eyes. The betrayal burned, but beneath it, something colder formed. Resolve. Because now he knew the truth. Lena wasn't the enemy. She was the proof. And Marcus Hale had just made his final move. Adrian didn't respond immediately. He lay still, eyes closed, machines humming softly around him. Lena's confession hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. "They said it would only make you sick," she continued, her voice shaking. "They said it was a test, that once you stepped down, it would stop." Adrian finally spoke. "Who told you that?" She swallowed. "Marcus." The name landed without shock, only confirmation. Adrian opened his eyes and turned toward her. There was no fury in his gaze, only a quiet intensity that frightened her more than shouting ever could. "Look at me," he said. She did. "I need you to listen carefully," Adrian continued. "Everything from this moment on happens exactly as I say. If you hesitate even once, Marcus wins. Do you understand?" Tears streamed down her face. She nodded. "Good," Adrian said calmly, "because we're going to end this." Marcus Hale believed the story immediately. The media leaks, the hushed phone calls, the rumors that Adrian Cross might not survive the week. Marcus had waited years for this opening. He visited the hospital the next day, wearing concern like a tailored suit. "Adrian," Marcus said softly, gripping his hand. "You scared us." Adrian forced a weak smile. "I'm glad you came." And Marcus believed that too. What Marcus didn't see was the tiny camera embedded in the IV monitor, or the biometric lock Adrian's security team had installed while pretending to adjust medical equipment. Everything Marcus said was recorded, including the moment he leaned in and whispered, "You should have stepped aside sooner." Outside the room, Lena waited. Marcus passed her and paused. "You did well," he murmured. "One more push, And this is over." She didn't reply. Her silence unnerved him, but only briefly. Marcus was already counting victories. That night, Adrian vanished. No announcement, no press statement. Just an empty hospital bed and a citywide panic. Marcus smiled. The final phase began. 48 hours later, Marcus hosted a private emergency board meeting. He stood at the head of the table, projecting calm authority. "Until Adrian recovers, or until we receive confirmation otherwise, we must stabilize the company." The board murmured agreement. Then the lights went out. Screens flickered to life instead. Adrian's face appeared, alive, steady, watching. The room froze. "Good evening," Adrian said. "I won't take much of your time." Marcus stood slowly. "This isn't funny." "I agree," Adrian replied. "Attempted murder rarely is." Gasps rippled through the room. Adrian's voice never rose. "Over the past 8 months, someone tried to kill me 3 times. Tonight, I'm going to show you who." Footage rolled. The brake failure, the elevator tampering, the drink switch, and finally, Marcus's hospital confession. The room erupted. Marcus lunged for the exit. Security was already there. Hours later, Marcus sat alone in a holding room, rage stripped down to terror. The door opened. Adrian stepped inside. Marcus laughed bitterly. "You think this ends me?" Adrian leaned forward. "It already has." "You used her," Marcus spat. "You let her betray you." Adrian didn't flinch. "No, I let you reveal yourself." For the first time, Marcus had no words. Lena stood on the rooftop at dawn. Adrian joined her, the city stretching beneath them like a battlefield finally quiet. "They'll protect my brother?" she asked. "Yes," Adrian said. "He's already safe." She nodded, relief crashing through her. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said quietly. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. "Forgiveness isn't a switch," he replied. "Neither is trust." Silence settled between them. Then she turned and walked away. And Adrian let her. Weeks later, Adrian returned to public life. Stronger, sharper, unreachable. The media called him ruthless. They were wrong. He was careful. In his office, overlooking the same city, Adrian poured a drink, then stopped. He smiled faintly and set it aside. Some habits never leave you. If this story pulled you in, now's the moment. Like the video, subscribe for more cinematic stories and comment below. Would you have stayed silent like Adrian? Or confronted the betrayal immediately? Your answer says more than you think. Adrian Cross returned to his desk and resumed watching. Because in a world built on power, silence was never weakness. It was vision, and it had saved his life.